Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a seasoned executive coach and speaker who is obsessed with building healthy organizations and creating the opportunity for people to have meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Driven by his deep belief in the potential of our species, he co-founded 15Five, industry-leading performance management software that is unlocking the potential of the global workforce. As Chief Culture Officer, he understands what fundamentally motivates people, how to architect high performance, and which principles and rituals create self-organizing cultures. Along with his co-founder, David Hassel, he has developed the best self-management methodology, which posits that by supporting people in learning, growing, and becoming their best selves over time, the natural byproduct is uncommonly high performance and loyalty. He has been featured in Fast Company, Inc., and the Washington Post. Welcome to the show, Shane Metcalf.
Matt, so good to be here. What an honor. Really excited to dig in on all the topics we're going to cover today. And hello to everybody out there listening.
Dude, it's great to have you on the show. You know, we had a little discussion before we started here, and it looks like we're kindred spirits. You got your van that you're ready to deck out. But also
you're also like 5 days older than me, and you have a kid that's going to be like 4 months older than my kid. So it was fun to find all those parallels.
Yeah. And you know, you're pursuing human performance and what that means for our culture. And when I had a chance to look at 15Five and what you've done, I was like, this is brilliant. Every company should be using this. This is absolutely brilliant. I just finished reading Flow, and can you say his name for me? Because you say it better.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi.
Yeah, I butcher it every time, but it's a fantastic book, and it gives like organizing principles for flow. And what you've done is like you've taken that groundwork, but other groundworks as well to incorporate that into the workplace. So it's really fantastic work. I'll stop talking about you and let you do it for yourself. Can you share with the audience a little bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so Shane Metcalf, co-founder and chief culture officer of 15Five. And boy, how I got here today, it's been a very non-linear path. You know, it's definitely not like I went to college and was said, oh, I'm going to I'm going to study business administration. And then I went and got my MBA, and I've been working at Bain ever since, and then started my own company. It's definitely been a path of, I know it's cliche, but of following your bliss. And maybe that has led me in some very strange non-linear directions in life. Parts of my life, parts of my 20, I basically threw my resume in the flames and said, all right, well, I'm going to have a 4-year gap of anything that would look like credible business on my resume, but allowed me to actually go through some very deep periods of introspection and personal development, really exploring community and interpersonal dynamics. How do you create intimacy and psychological safety in a room in record amount of time? Really exploring works of like Ken Wilber's Integral Theory and Don Beck's Spiral Dynamics, and all these other kind of cool maps of consciousness and the developmental stages that organizations and individuals go through. And it was cool because I loved it. I fell in love with all of these different systems and models. And that ultimately led me to becoming an executive coach, because it was like, okay, cool. What do you do after working on yourself for 4 years? Oh, you become a coach, like every other person in the Bay Area. And so I started coaching, and that ultimately led to an opportunity to join 15Five as a co-founder. And so for the last 8 years, we've been building this company with this question, with this idea of what would happen if we built a company whose sole purpose was unlocking the potential of every member inside of our company. What would happen if we built a product that was designed to not just help manage performance inside of organizations, but was actually designed to help people be and become a better version of themselves? Wouldn't that lead to uncommonly high performance, to high loyalty? And it's pretty cool, Matt. 8 years in, we have some great results to speak of. We're growing like crazy. We're scaling the company pretty fast at this point. Kind of slow and steady growth, and all of a sudden we've been hitting exponential curves. But in 8 years, we've had 5 people voluntarily leave the company. Only 2 of those people left for another job. So, unprecedented low turnover. And we have a perfect 5-star rating on Glassdoor. And what's fascinating about that is that it's like, I think that these kinds of results are actually more available to business leaders. And that if we just start to ask the question, how can, as a leader, as anybody that is influencing more people than just myself, how can I leave them better than I found them? How can I contribute to these people being and becoming their best selves? And that simple change of mind can do absolute wonders for any organization out there.
That's amazing, man. What an amazing intention to have and to create. And like I said at the beginning, I had an opportunity to go through some your website in 15.5, and I was seeing how you did that. And you really have taken a lot about a high level personal development and peak performance, and you made it in a way that it's easy to understand. And that's really the challenging thing, is like so many people will read books on spirituality, self-improvement, personal development, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the time they get stuck and they say, I don't know what to do, Matt. Like, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know how to do. I don't know what to do. And you've broken it down into very simple steps with an absolutely amazing intention. And there's a lot of ways I'd like to kind of take this conversation. But the first thing I'd like to speak about is, what have you learned about the models? What kind of systems are you using, and how are you cultivating? Like, what are some of the best tools for leadership growth in organizations? Because I've looked at it a little bit in sports and that kind of dynamic for peak performance and flow state, but it looks like you're cultivating that in the work environments by using this software.
Yeah, well, I mean, and this really well from sports psychology, is that peak performance and learning how to operate at higher levels of performance happens in real time. It happens in the very minute, small decisions and small micro corrections that we make. You think of a large clock, and that you can, in order to get those massive hands to shift, it's actually a series of very small gears that are turning bigger gears that are turning the massive hands. And so I think of personal development and high performance as that it actually starts with the small shifts. It starts with the tiny habits that we can start to improve. And in improving those small things, we start to see much bigger results. And another thing that I think that is ripe for disruption is that we've been thinking of, let's just call it business high performance, in a very segregated, isolated capacity. We've taken, being a top sales rep, or, being a genius marketer, or a brand builder, or kind of visionary CEO, or an amazing, competent customer support rep. And we've taken those things out of the context of the full human, and we've isolated them. And if you really want to get the best performance from your people, you need to start seeing them as a whole human. You need to understand that here's this complex, dynamic, multifaceted human being who has a hierarchy of needs. We draw a lot from Maslow's work, from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's a need for belonging. There's a need for psychological safety, for esteem. And all those things lead to self-actualization. And so by creating cultures where people are able to discover these deeper truths about themselves, people are able to, let's take esteem from Maslow's hierarchy. That before having a level of self-actualization, before having a level of high performance, we need to have enough esteem in ourselves in order to actually pursue that. And so an amazing thing that organizations can do is help people understand, well, what are their strengths? We're a big believer in strengths-based management at 15.5. So you can have people go through a strengths assessment and get their Gallup top 5 strengths. And all of a sudden, there can be an opportunity for that person to have an epiphany about how they're wired and ways that they're naturally designed to perform. And then if you reinforce that, you put opportunities to cultivate those strengths, you can turn them into superpowers. And that's really when work gets fun, when we're doing things that we're competent at. And as we do them, our confidence grows, we become more competent, and then our work suddenly is giving us energy. It's actually fueling us. And that also rests upon a ecosystem of healthy relationships, where you actually enjoy the people you work with. There's not just this truckload of withholds and resentments. And so much of that goes into some of the basics of kind of cultural engineering. How do you get people to collaborate effectively? How do you get people to learn more about each other and about who we really are as humans beyond just the surface of our work selves?
That's awesome, man. I was taking notes as you were going along there. You said a lot of things I think that were really important. And one of them I liked was, why the small changes, make for the big changes over time. And I had recently just did a podcast with Dr. Eddie O'Connor, who's a sports psychologist, and Howard Falco together. And I can't remember which of them said it, but they gave an example of it was like a Brazilian team. I can't remember which team it was, but the goal of the coach was to improve all the small things by just 1%, improve everything that they did by 1%, improve sleep by 1%, improve training by 1%, improve, all these little tiny like diet by 1%, whatever the case was, and measure those metrics. And, in hopes to, in a few Olympics win a gold medal. And they ended up doing it right away. Or it could have been a championship team. I think that's what it was. It was like the Boston Red Sox or something like that. But the idea was small changes anyway, but it seems to work. And I know that when you are trying to perform at a high level, a lot of people are talking about flow state nowadays. They're talking about peak performance and mindset and all these things. And a lot of times people want that like quick fix and biohack and make it all happen immediately. And you're so right when it is like, when you go throughout a work day or you're going to perform at a high level for something very important, it's your adaptation to what is happening in that moment. And the more powerful you can create that environment, the faster that you can change. And all the things that you're talking about with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I think that everyone listening to this wishes they had a work environment like that. And so maybe you could speak a little bit about how can you apply these principles as an individual to your family? If you're a CEO, how do you implement it into your organizations? And I'm kind of thinking that like the people out there would be like, man, this feels like an amazing idea and I wish my company would adopt that, but it seems like a pipe dream. And I hate my coworkers and everything sucks there because
yeah, screw those people.
Yeah.
Screw
But what
those
you're
guys.
talking about is like, if you look at Google, and I've seen some amazing work environments, they make it fun and they make it engaging, but you're putting another level on top of that. That's very fascinating because again, I've seen some of the structure of how you do it. And I invite people to check out your website because you give a little bit of information there, but those are kind of the checklists that I use for myself or when I'm training others to see where I'm going and measure my feedback, measure my results. And doing that in a team dynamic would be a very powerful experience.
Yeah, well, people forget that we actually have physical bodies, and that's why I love of where your approach is that when you're training athletes, of course you're going to pay attention to sleep, diet, rest, all training. And in business, we almost like pretend like we're just these disembodied brains that don't actually need sleep. I mean, if every business out there started saying, hey, we want to help all of our employees improve their sleep by 1%. Your productivity and your creativity engagement would skyrocket. So we aren't thinking about those things the way we should be. We need to be thinking about the physical, emotional, and mental selves of the human being. And we have all those 3 different layers. And so if you can start creating a culture where those realities are at least acknowledged, you don't even need to start doing anything as a company, to address them, all you can, like the easiest thing you can do is you can start valuing the internal states. A really simple way of doing this is doing the 1-word check-in before, as you start meetings. Just of like, what's the weather report? How are people feeling in 1 or 2 words? And people are like tired, energized, excited, and it's amazing how just having that moment to bring a little bit of our humanity, bring a little bit of like what we're actually feeling in the present moment, and have that witnessed in the room, it changes everything. People start to feel like how they feel actually matters. And when you start to care about people at that level, you create a really deep field of psychological safety. And that's where all of our best creativity, that's where our full engagement is going to come from.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And it's interesting because if you look at the way that the world is run and how, let's just say, business seems to be going in a lot of places, it's overworked. It's, continue the deadline. It's the bottom line. It's all of those things. And when you talk about rest in this and just being human and how important that is. So, depression and anxiety is higher than it's ever been. And people are running themselves ragged. It's an awful environment. And there's a book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, and it's about management and leadership. You might have read that one. And they said the number one motivator of people isn't money, it's appreciation. And what you're speaking about is fundamentals, and you can't go onto the next level. You can't go into mastery without fundamentals. Like a boxing, if I teach a young kid how to box or something, right? They want to kind of go into like advanced moves or punches. I'm like, just practice a jab like 1,000 times, 10,000 times. Like, why would I do that? It's like such a basic punch. I've already learned it. But then meanwhile, you've got the master boxers who are practicing jabs hundreds and thousands of times in this basic fundamental thing. But from those fundamentals of whatever you're doing, you can build from there in a way that you can't without them. And so it's almost like, don't pass go and collect 200 unless you're taking care of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And once you've built one layer, you can then go on the other layer, because you can get results the other way. And we have done that, but it's very taxing on the employee. It treats us like cattle. People feel disenfranchised and upset. They leave their jobs, and really overall, it creates a culture. This is our work culture. And when I'm traveling to different cities and listening to different people talk, they just express that that's the culture they're in, and it feels like a trap. It feels like a prison. And what you're kind of suggesting is it doesn't have to be that way. But what about
and I love that you brought up appreciation too, because you know what? Appreciation is free. Like, we make it easier in our software. We have this feature called High Fives that prompts people to share recognition and appreciation. But you don't need our software to do that. Like, I challenge everybody here listening that's in any kind of management position, thank everybody on your team once a week. Offer a genuine acknowledgement and appreciation for them. And sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to thank my people for doing their job. And I'm like, no, that's exactly what you should do. If they're doing a shitty job, don't thank them for that. But if they're doing their job with some level of competence, thank them for it. 80% of employees that have left companies, and this is a recent survey, said one of the primary reasons they're leaving their company is a lack of appreciation. It doesn't cost anything to stop for a moment and offer somebody some authentic, genuine, heartfelt appreciation. And then, people are like, well, I'm not good at offering appreciation. You're not any good at giving appreciation because you don't do it. It's like, I can't throw a jab, so I'm not going to ever practice throwing a jab. It's such a limited mindset. We need to start breaking out of that. We need to understand, wow, this is one of the easiest ways to build a better culture, to build a higher performing culture, is lay on the appreciation. And people are really concerned that it's going to turn people into entitled, a bunch of entitled millennials that are just demanding, they're like, well, you thanked me for this. Now where's my $10 green juice in the fridge? And it's like, no, that's actually how you prevent a culture of entitlement, is by building a culture of gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said too about, the appreciation is free and you can do that each week. But what I love about technology when used correctly is that it provides an opportunity for us to really elevate our performance. And so when you want to track your performance, if you're trying to achieve a very challenging goal, you want to track it all. And we might know what we should do, but if we don't write it down and we don't have it in front of us, we might forget. We might forget to appreciate. But when it's on a simple checklist, it's like, you know what? I didn't do these things. Like I forgot my squats this week, or I forgot to do my visualization, or whatever the case is. You can then go back and measure your results. And that's really what this is offering. It's like, these are proven techniques that have worked, that have science behind them, that we've seen work in cultures. And these are the boxes that you need to check off. And this is how it works. And it's also adaptable with the feedback of the company. And as you learn more things. And what I'm curious about is, can you share some of the other tools that you use in there, or how either a CEO or somebody might use this and kind of see how it operates, or how an individual might take some of these tools and apply it to their own life? Because most of what I saw in there, you could apply to your own life and have great examples or great
Yeah,
success with.
totally. So I mean, the fundamental idea of 15.5 is that we're creating more feedback loops inside of companies. And feedback loops are so healthy, so generative for any system they're in, because it allows the system to start talking to itself. So if you think of a company as a multi-celled organism, like let's say 15.5 is a single body. And there's, we have about 200 people that work in the company, and every person is a different organ or a different cell. A healthy body is a body that's in communication with itself, where the brain is in resonance with the heart, and there's information being gathered about how good digestion is and blood flow, and there's pain sensors happening from the external world, and it's all giving itself information, and then can adapt and make changes as necessary. And so what is not working in a lot of organizations, and that causes a lot of cultural toxicity, the leadership team to be super dysfunctional, is that you don't have the right feedback loops in place. And so, with 15.5, what we do is we ask questions. We think that questions are one of the most underutilized kind of magic power sources of management that anybody has. And so we automate the asking of questions on a weekly basis. So the whole premise of 15.5 is you have every person in the company spend 15 minutes to write the answers to a couple of questions, and then it takes the manager 5 minutes to review. And fun fact about our origin is that it was actually Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia, who came up with this methodology in the 70s. And he and the founder of the North Face used this system where 15 minutes a week of self-reflection and how things are going in your role. How are people doing around you? Where are you stuck? What do you need help with? Then it takes the manager 5 minutes to review. And I always have this vision of like Yvon, climbing Everest base camp and getting these reports faxed to him, where he's getting verbatim insight into how everybody in the company is actually doing. And it's asked not to monitor people. It's not saying, tell me what you did, tell me justify your week. It's actually saying, what is going on? Where are you stuck? It's giving everybody in the company a voice so they can contribute to the conversation. And what that does is it allows managers to know what's actually going on with people. Because if somebody doesn't know that you're struggling with something, that you're stuck on a project, or that you're having a rough week at home, maybe something personal is going on. If they don't know that, they can't actually help. And so we need to take 100% accountability of saying, yeah, I'm responsible to be asking for what I need to be successful in my role. And most companies just don't have these systems set up. Or most companies, maybe there's a lower level of trust. And so people don't think that they can be the ones to instigate actually asking questions or volunteering information. And we need to recognize that level of distrust is not serving anybody. It's not serving the employer. It's certainly not serving the employee. And so we need to we need to begin somewhere. We need to start asking the questions. And what happens is over time, as we begin to tell the truth, distrust starts to dissolve. And as we dissolve distrust, we actually become better versions of ourselves. We start engaging in our work more. We start thinking about how can this be more than just a job, and how can I actually align with the purpose of the company? All kinds of cool things happen when you start asking the right questions, having the right conversations on a regular basis. And that's essentially what our software helps facilitate. There's a lot of nuances, and we provide different kind of 360 review feedback and performance reviews and OKR tracking for goals. But at the end of the day, ask better questions, you're going to get better results.
It sounds a lot like what Richard Branson would talk about, and it also sounds a lot like common sense to want to get the feedback and hear where your employees are. Having everybody out there doing something is gonna, if you if you've got into most companies, you go to the water cooler, everyone's gonna have advice about why so and so is frigging up and why the company could do this and so and so could do that. And a lot of those things would be valid. Some of them wouldn't be valid, but if they feel heard and you were actually getting that feedback, you would know so much more about your company. And it's more than that. It's about feeling, helping them feel valued. And it's more than that because it's creating a culture where people would actually want to show up to work. And so if you are in a leadership role, that's what you're trying to do. And as a leader, it's very challenging. If you read books on leadership and how to manage people, sometimes you'll just get yes men. Sometimes you won't get the right advice. And what this does is it allows you to ensure that you're getting the information you need to make higher quality choices at a quicker rate. You can adapt a lot quicker.
Yeah, and look, like the pace of business is so crazy fast now. In a year, a competitor could come along and put a giant out of business. And so we need to be highly adaptive. And if you aren't listening to your people, if you're not asking people, how do we be more adaptive, and then listening to that feedback, you're going to get left behind. It's cool because I think we're at an inflection point where we're starting to understand that humans really are our greatest asset as a company. They're not even assets. They're not a resource. And this whole century we've been saying human resources, like we're just fucking lumps of coal to be thrown in the furnace and to create a little steam so the engine can go one more foot down the track. And that's bullshit. Humans are not resources. Humans have resource within us, but if you start to think of people as potential to be unlocked rather than as resources, then you're going to really start discovering we're capable of so much more than we think we're capable of. And you start to build that kind of a culture, and that's when you can really start to create breakthroughs and be a top performer in your industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you see any application with this idea in schools or other organizations that aren't entrepreneurial?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. We've actually had parents come to us and say, hey, I want to use 15.5 to run my family. So I'm going to have my kids fill out 15.5s. And, so there are definitely cases like that. We have a lot of universities using us. Right now, we're really focused on the knowledge worker kind of business, because that's, you've got to stay focused. And maybe in 5 years, we're going to say, hey, let's roll out some programs in schools. But right now, we're really focused on
what would you define as the knowledge worker business? And I understand when you're going into business that you want to pick one market. And also at the same time, you're saying that if you had the resources and time, it would be applicable to other spaces.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, typically our system works best for people that are already using computers on a regular basis. It's not going to be, we haven't optimized it for the service industry, for manufacturing, and more blue collar roles. We're really saying, hey, look, like we want to meet people in their existing flows of work, in the places they're already doing their work. And so for knowledge workers, that's already behind computers. And, you know, as the mobile app continues to develop, you know, we definitely think there's a lot of possibility around going into pretty much any industry where there's somebody that is managing other people. And that's kind of the crazy thing, is that the total market of people that manage other people is massive. You know, there's almost no limit to that. And why we're focusing on this is that business has a very strong financial incentive to increase productivity, to improve culture. And that's what's so cool, is that people are finally getting hip to culture, that culture isn't just a cost center. Culture can double, triple your revenue if you get it right. You know, that's what Gallup says, is if you get culture right, you can double your revenue, which is massive implications.
Yeah,
You know, people are needing to retain their best talent. So like, you know, one really cool metric that people should be thinking about is employee lifetime value, which is how long does somebody stay at your organization and how much value do they produce over time. And you can easily improve your ELTV simply by taking better care of your people, by genuinely caring about their well-being and that they're a better version of themselves for having worked at your company.
Yeah,
And, you know, it's funny because, like, for me, this is so the norm of how we think about this. And it's the water I'm swimming in, of like, of course you would take care of your people. And then we have people that join 15-5 and they're like, oh my God, I didn't even know this was possible. I didn't know that an organization could actually care about the personal growth and development of their people.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because when you're speaking, when I see a good idea and I know that this is a good idea and it has a lot of potential, just because there's so much room for improvement in the world that we exist in. And when you speak about culture, most people, I remember when I was going to college and everybody was going to university. I was like, what do you guys want to do with your life? Like, you know, do you want to travel? Do you want to do this and that? And 100% of my friends were going to university to get a job and do that thing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm the only one that's like not really thinking that. And that's I knew I thought a little bit different at that point. And it didn't really hit me until then, because remember just thinking 40 hours a week, you know, 2 weeks off a year is messed up. And so that's where you're spending a lot of your life. And culture is not just the culture in your family or the culture in your city. There's work culture is one of the main cultures that we experience as human beings. And if that culture overall could get a 1% improvement, or your culture that you work in, you know, gets a massive boost and improvement, your overall quality of life is going to go way up. And if you're an entrepreneur and you see this as an opportunity, if you think of something that is of contribution to other people, you pick an idea that does something good for your community, gives back to the world, like the Patagonia story is fantastic, you know, making clothing, but, you know, doing the right thing at the same time, you're going to get people on board with that and really behind what you're doing. And that's what you need if you want to succeed. Like if you have an employee that's coming in and punching, you know, the clock and goes home and doesn't think about it, that's okay. You know, they're getting a paycheck. But if they're really engaged with what they do because they appreciate, you know, the employment, the experience that they have there and everything that they show up for, they're going to be giving their all to that experience. It's going to improve their life, but it's going to improve your business immensely.
Yeah. You know, that story of in the 60s during the space race, who knows if this is true or not, but there's a cool kernel of wisdom in it. And somebody's at NASA and they see a janitor and they ask, oh, what do you do here? And the janitor looks at the person and says, I'm helping put a man on the moon. And that's how we want to think about it. That's why it's so important for us to take a deeper look at why does our organization exist? You know, why are you doing the Zen athlete? Why am I doing 15-5? Why is Costco doing Costco? And really get clear on what is the higher purpose of our company, because making money is not enough. We need to do more. Like, just look around. The world is hungry for meaning, for purpose, for play. And oh, guess what? It's now proven that purpose, play, meaning, potential, that's going to get the highest performance. Economic pressure, emotional pressure, just showing up because you've always been showing up, that actually gets the lowest performance. And I want to read you something. So every Monday I do a gratitude reflection for our company. And this is also a way of creating more flow states, because we know that when you can put the brain into a positive brain state through heightened emotions of love, gratitude, it really actually changes our brain state. And so every Monday before our all hands, I just do like a simple 5-minute gratitude reflection. And so this morning was the focus around like this new world of work where there's more compassion, more humanity, more communication, more empathy, more vulnerability inside of our organizations. And again, I know it's not equally distributed yet, but it is happening. And somebody wrote about what they're grateful for. Emily Diaz, what's up? Shout out to Emily. And I loved what she wrote. She said, "I'm grateful for the new world of work for bringing more oneness to personal growth and professional growth." Merging personal growth and professional growth. That we can have some of the best experiences of our lives inside of our work, and that all the values and virtues of a life well lived show up at our jobs in the new world of work. The myth of who I am personally being different from who I am professionally gets busted. In truth, it's all one life, with the potential to be richly satisfying from any facet. And that's what we're talking about. That is the opportunity, to build organizations, to build movements where it isn't 70% of the country is disengaged at work. Let's make it 70% is engaged. What a different reality that would be. And that's what's so cool, is we all have the opportunity, and we need to all take 100% accountability. If you're not loving your role, if you don't love your culture, you're the only person that can do anything about it. If you're a business owner, you need to take 100% accountability to create the macro culture. And so we all have way more power. We all have more influence, because ultimately we're contagious. Like, whatever our energetic state is going to be contagious and affect everybody else around us.
Yeah, man, I absolutely agree with all that. And I love the characteristics that you outlined. Can you use meaning? How did you phrase it?
Potential, purpose, and play are the 3 highest intrinsic motivators.
Yeah.
Because, this whole conversation around motivation, like, why is somebody doing something affects how they do it.
Oh, I was going to let you keep going. I was writing those down because it's so good. And what I love about that is when you feed that into like your intention and what you're doing, like you could be working at a company, right? And if it doesn't line up with that, you could then pivot to a different space, but it would be up to you and your meaning and your own values and your own like kind of guiding post. But the more of us that move towards meaning and contribution in the way that you'd kind of shared, there is so much opportunity and income because you end up making money in business when you solve a problem. And there are so many things out there that could use a little bit of motivation and a little bit of heart. And if you look at the way that the planet is now, that's what we need. We need individuals to be empowered, to recognize that they can do something. And if they start to work on a solution, there's going to be more people that really want to help with that solution. And if we can create engaging and wonderful work environments where there can be support financially, emotionally, physically, spiritually, in all those different ways, that's how we start, making this planet a better place. Because right now, when you look at the state of things, and like you said, 70% of people are disengaged, I would probably be higher. Ideally it's only 70. And so how do we flip that coin? It's going to have to start with the individual. And do you want to say anything about that? I was going to ask you another question, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that we're moving in the right direction. I like to think of myself as a rational optimist. But if we look at, the state of engagement versus from 1800, from 1500s, we're going in a good direction. There's so much more we can do. And so I think it's about having the emotional courage to start taking those risks. And for people that want this, but know they couldn't have that inside of their existing company, well, the good news is that more and more companies are looking for people like that. It's no longer, there's one company that's doing this well. There are hundreds and hundreds of companies that are starting to understand that if I take care of our people, they will take care of the company. It's really simple math once you start to see it.
And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs? Because what you said at the beginning of your intention of building this company and how it serves other companies, I think is really amazing. But in that in itself was an entrepreneurial endeavor. And so some people might have those aspirations. Are like, you know what? I don't like my job. I get this all the time. I want to make a change. I'm not happy where I am. I know I can make a more of an impact. And I am always like, yes, you can. That's why I have this show, to see all these other people who've done it. I'm trying to do it. I've been successful in some ways and failed way more than the success, but I'm still kind of en route and it's been kind of okay. But I'm trying, and I know that you can too. And eventually you're going to make that impact that you want, but you're going to have to put some effort towards it, probably over a period of time. So can you share a little bit of what you've learned about as an entrepreneur and any advice you'd give to somebody who is looking just looking to make an impact? They're not sure what to do. And maybe you can just share some fundamentals or some things you've learned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you know, being an entrepreneur is a totally insane endeavor. It's no sane human being should take on trying to build their own company. It's an enormous amount of work. The odds of failure are drastically higher than success. So there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't try to pursue your own thing.
You're really encouraging them. They're going to feel everyone's going to be just so excited now. They're just like, yes.
And part of that is that not everybody does need to do their own thing. Because I think that, I'll just go into this a little bit further. And this is something my co-founder, David Hassel, talks a lot about is, he'll be in a room with, 200 other CEOs. And he likes to ask this question of like, how many of you are highly intrinsically motivated and feel like you're doing your passion? And, most of the hands go up. And then he'll ask, how many of you do you think your employees have their job because they're just deeply passionate about it and aren't intrinsically motivated? And not many hands go up. And what I think we should start thinking about is, yes, it's awesome for the few and crazy ones that want to start their own thing. And for those people, you kind of know it. You kind of got to do it, going against all common sense, because I think it's part of kind of who you have to become. Starting something and building a company is one of the greatest personal transformational experiences you could ever take on, because you have to become a better version of yourself. It's like, don't become a millionaire for the money, become a millionaire for who you'll become. That kind of idea. And I think that applies for a select group of entrepreneurial people. But we can help people find their purpose, live their purpose, live in accordance with their highest values, even if they choose not to do the crazy path of founding their own company. And that's what we should start thinking about. How do we actually create that experience and opportunities for that kind of passion and intrapreneurial spirit inside of our organizations?
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction. And I like that, because on Instagram these days with the kids out there, it's all about, the entrepreneur life and the money in cars. And I really believe that people should take account of what's important to them, what their values are, what they want to contribute to, where they want to grow, and move towards meaning. And you're very correct, because not everybody is wired like that, and it takes a ton of work, and you need to dedicate almost everything to that endeavor if you're going to be successful, because it's going to be hard. You're going to have a lot of failures. And so a lot of people can find a lot of happiness and contentment with life experiences and jobs and vocations that they enjoy doing. And they don't have to go like that other route, because the other route is just, it is a certain group of people. And what I'm seeing out there is that when people try and then they fail, and this is happening a lot, they're like, I quit my job and I try to do this and I failed. It's like, it is so hard to do. Whoever is telling you and marketing to you that this is an easy thing is not a true
They're
thing.
lying.
Maybe they're lying to you, right?
They're selling you something.
And then you paid $1,000 to have it easy, and what they did is they made $1,000. And I've bought those programs. They all of them have my money. And that's like, it's, and I'm still.
I made it through 20% of the course.
Yeah, right. And so, I think that's a good point. But also at the same time, I think that the people that are inspired to do it, it's a challenging thing. But what would be your main pieces of advice if they're going to do it, if they really want to go towards something and build something that vision is there for? What do you recommend for them?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, like, the journey is as important as the destination. So if you're only doing it and like, oh, my happiness and my health, my relationships, I can focus on those once I have an IPO, once I have a big exit. You're going to be throwing your life away. Design the company from the ground up to be one where you can actually be yourself, where you can show up and you can have a sense of belonging. You can feel like you actually are seen and valued for the real gifts that you bring to the table. Because what can happen is that if we don't build our company from a foundation of authenticity, from a foundation of our true values, we'll wake up one day and we'll realize, whoa, I'm actually degrading as a human being on this journey to get rich. And I'm not actually being enriched upon this journey. And so by clarifying what are your true values from an early moment in the company, how can I make decisions in accordance with those? How can I use those values to solve the problems of the business? That's how you know you have the right values, is you use them to actually solve real problems. They're not just like bullshit you put up on the wall. It's actually lived. It actually changes the nature of the conversation. So, I mean, that's a way of ensuring that there's long-term success. I mean, we're 8 years into building this company, and it feels like we're just really getting started. And I have better friendships with my co-founders than when we started. I'm healthier. I have thriving relationships outside of life, outside of work. And it's been a very fulfilling journey. It's been hard. There's been trials and tribulations, but ultimately I feel like I am infinitely better off for having walked this path. Even if the whole thing went up in flames tomorrow, I would still feel like this was a life well lived. And that's a really cool feeling, because at that point you can let go of some of the greed, some of the like rat race that it's only worth it if we win. And it's actually, it helps you slow down, be a little more present, cherish the people you work with. And then all of a sudden you start having this different experience of work, and you start entering more flow states. You start finding the zen of your job, and the work quality goes up. And ultimately, by building a superior product, you're going to win in the marketplace. You have to market it. You have to sell it. You have to let people know about your superior product. But that all comes with the package as well.
Brilliantly put. It's so grateful that you shared that story, because I think that, just sharing, like, it's 8 years and the intention behind it and the work, and just talking about a life well lived. You just package that up wonderfully. I appreciate you coming on, and with what you're doing. I honestly, wholeheartedly believe in what you're doing over there to transform every business that experiences your product and what you're doing. It affects everybody in that culture, their quality of life, their mindset, their cooperation. And we're losing a lot of people. This is a little bit of a diversion, but we're losing a lot of people to suicide, to depression, to anxiety,
Yeah.
because they feel alone. They can't go to, imagine work was the only place you felt safe. I know that from sports and coaching kids and teens, that a lot of times the sports and the coaches are the only places that those kids feel safe, that they feel like they can make something of themselves. And that's why it's so important that we are supporting our coaches, our sports, our athletes, our artists, our musicians, and all those things. And what if work of all places could be the
Yeah,
safe haven? It doesn't make any sense.
absolutely.
It doesn't make
Well,
any
and
sense right now in the
completely,
world, but yeah.
and I mean, I love that, because all it takes is that single safe space, that single kind of light in your life to act as a foothold for you to pull yourself up to a higher plane of existence.
And it'll affect all your life, your family life, your relationships, your motivation, your health. And yeah, man, so I 100% am behind what you're doing. I think it's so brilliant. I hadn't seen anything like that, and I know it's doing a lot of good, and you have my full support if I can help you in any way. Is there anything that you wish that I had asked you, or that you want to talk about before we close it up?
Well, I mean, just one thought that's occurring is that, I think that part of our success that we've created internally with our culture is by breaking the rules. Like, we're doing shit that other companies aren't doing. Like, this year, I was like, okay, we want to provide transformational experiences for our people. What's one of the most transformational experiences I've ever been to, and that's really positively impacted my life and enhanced my creativity and helped me have more community and creativity? Oh, going to Burning Man. Like, I've been going to Burning Man for 10 years. My co-founder's been a bunch of times. We're like, fuck it. Let's buy every person at 15.5 their first ticket to Burning Man. And, like, people were like, oh my God, that's an insane idea. And then we were like, yeah, no, let's do it. And all of a sudden, we have people taking us up on it. And we've got a whole crew of Ukrainians going to Burning Man next year. And it's so fun because we don't have to follow the rules. Like, reality is just, we're making this shit up as we go. Like, companies don't even exist. Companies are literally legal fictions. All it is a bunch of human beings collaborating together, and, some government piece of paper that makes 15.5, but it's just a myth. And so what's really cool is that all of us are storytellers, and we can tell any story we want. We can break the rules, do things that haven't been done, and create businesses so that we are that safe space, so that we benefit people's mental health, that we have people come and they say, oh, wow, I don't need to kill myself. There is a different path. And that's what's really exciting.
That's amazing, man. Well, I love how you brought up Burning Man. I can't even remember now, 5 or 6 times. It was the first year I had to miss this year with the little one.
Yeah.
And it's a great microcosm, because the camps that I've been to a lot of really great camps. And after a few years, you notice you notice right away, but people have a perception of what it is. And I had Caveat Magister on. He wrote a book about Burning Man and its philosophy, and how much you learn about leadership and life. It's such a hard environment. And when you go and create a camp, you think about all the shiny things you hear about, but you don't understand all the hard work and the service. And it's like this wonderful microcosm when you're really contributing to what that is. And when I'm there, I'm always asking people, how are you? You get down to a very real conversation immediately, because you just kind of have to. And it's like, how are you in regular life? You know, how are you in the people call it the default world or Burning Man? I don't know how it works, but
Yeah, default world.
yeah,
Yeah.
they had the default world, right? Especially you being in the, you know, the San Fran area. And, you know, a lot of people are unhappy. And if you can create that culture in that life where you don't want to escape it, that's the premium. And that's up to you as the individual. And if you can do that in a culture, or you have a job where that culture is being created there and you're working towards something meaningful and you enjoy the people you work with, that's the premium result. You want to be experiencing life in a way that you're not trying to escape it. And, you know, a lot of people feel like their work is a trap. And, you know, I've worked the worst job ever. It was my friends and I at a temp agency, and we were scraping with like basically toothbrushes, machines that had set on fire. And it was one of my most favorite work days just because my two buddies were there. And because of
Yep.
that mini culture we created. And if there's more of us, we could still create that culture and do a crappy job or something that wouldn't be perceived as fun. We packed toilets one summer and that was fun. And just because of how we would change the culture by us being there through our mindset. And so it's completely possible to do jobs where that would be quote unquote hard and not fun, and through a different lens and a few other items, make it a much more empowering and enriching and fulfilling experience.
Well, and I love that because in that interaction of you and your buddy, plunging toilets or whatever you guys were doing, you made it fun. And that was the culture, because culture is a real-time biological phenomenon. Culture is also not this like static thing where culture's the employee manual. That's not culture. Culture is the quality of interactions between individuals. It's the amount of trust. So
amazing, man. Well, I appreciate you and what you're doing. Good luck on the van. It sounds amazing. Make sure that when I'm up west, you drive that van to where I am, man. We'll go snowboarding or surfing or
I
something.
can't
But
wait, man. It's just like such a dream come true.
yeah, dude.
And
Hopefully I'll have one side by side, man. It'll be so awesome with just sprinters going
yeah.
down the coast. Where can people find more about you? And is there anything else that you want to share before we go?
Yeah, sure. So best place is follow me on LinkedIn. I'm most active on LinkedIn. I'm posting pretty regularly there. If you Google, it's a fun article in Inc. I think it's like Inc. Company pay for their people to go to Burning Man or something like that. There's a
So you're
hilarious.
considered the biggest hippie company in all of San Francisco, which is a
So,
huge feat.
I know, man. It's not an easy title to have won. It's a hilarious article because I really like it, because I actually go into some of the more nuance of like why it's not just this like sex and drug debacle, and it's actually is valuable for leadership and collaboration, as you know. So that's LinkedIn. You can just Google me. We have a podcast as well. We are loving playing the podcast game. It's an honor to be on your podcast. That is Best Self Management, managing people to be their best self. So Best Self Management, it's on all of the major platforms. You can definitely dig in and learn more about us there, as well as our main website, which is 155.com. That's 15five.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the work you're doing. Thanks for setting that intention. And I'm wishing you all the best in your company, man. Thank you for coming on the show. And I invite everybody who's a CEO, who has a company, use the software. You got to use it. It's brilliant. And if you're not, then design a company and then use it. So thanks, man.
Awesome.
I appreciate it, man.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Yeah. See you later. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Peace.